I think my mother doesn't know what's real anymore. My son, Ethan, said those words
I
so
appreciate her
calmly
passion,
that everyone
but
around the
perhaps we
dining
should
table
consider if
believed
these
him
claims are
before I
rooted
could
in
even
reality,
speak.
or if something
Every
else is going
protest I
on.
made became more
Stop looking at me
proof
like that.
that I was
I am not
confused.
losing my mind. I know
My own
exactly
family
what
looked at me with
happened.
pity instead of trust.
It's all here.
Then attorney Patricia Monroe quietly stood up,
Everything they
held a
tried to
small
hide.
flash drive in her hand, and said,
Let's
"Before
take a look at the
anyone
security
signs a
footage
single
from the
document,
evening in question.
I'd like everyone to watch the security recording from Marjorie's house." No one noticed that Ethan had suddenly gone pale. If my story touches you, I'd love for you to stay with me until the end. Please, like this video if you've ever seen someone judged too quickly, and subscribe if stories like mine remind you that the truth always deserves a voice. I'd also love to know where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. And if you've ever had someone doubt your memory or your honesty, share your story in the comments. You never know who might need to hear it. For most of my adult life, I believed peace was something you earned slowly, the way you earn the soft grooves in an old wooden chair or the faded marks on a kitchen table. My husband Michael and I had spent 39 years building that peace inside our little brick house on Ashbury Lane in Columbus, Ohio. It was not a mansion. It had no marble staircase, no grand entryway, no swimming pool shining behind glass doors. But it was ours. Every corner of it held a piece of our life. The maple tree in the front yard was planted the spring after Ethan was born. The dent in the hallway wall came from the year he tried riding his bicycle inside the house during a snowstorm. The white porch swing was where Michael and I drank coffee every Saturday morning, even after his hands started trembling from the illness that finally took him from me. When Michael passed, people expected me to fall apart. Maybe part of me did. But I had spent 28 years working as a manager at the Columbus Public Library, and one thing I had learned from thousands of books was that grief does not always look like weeping on the floor. Sometimes grief looks like getting up, making toast, paying the electric bill, folding towels, and sitting alone at the kitchen table with 2 coffee mugs out of habit. 3 years after Michael's funeral, I had found a routine. I woke early, watered, my African violets, walked to the mailbox, read the newspaper with 1 cup of tea, and volunteered twice a week at the community center. On Sundays, I cooked enough food for 3 families, even though I lived alone. Ethan always said that was one of the things he loved most about me. "Mom, you still cook like Dad's bringing home the whole church choir," he would say, opening my refrigerator and smiling. Ethan was 42, then tall like his father, with the same dark blonde hair Michael had before it turned silver. He worked as a financial consultant downtown, wore pressed shirts, even on casual days, and spoke with the kind of calm confidence that made people trust him before they knew him. For a long time, I was proud of that. A mother wants to believe her son has become a good man. She wants to believe the bedtime stories, the packed lunches, the birthday cakes, the scraped knees kissed on the porch, all led somewhere decent. Ethan was my only child. After Michael died, he started visiting more often. At first, I thought it was love. He would come by after work carrying takeout from my favorite diner. He would change light bulbs I could have changed myself. He would look over my car tires, test the smoke detectors, and ask if I had remembered to take my blood pressure pill. "You don't have to fuss over me," I told him one evening as he stood on a chair, tightening the loose cabinet hinge above the stove. "I know I don't have to," he said. "I want to." Those words warmed me. They settled into the lonely spaces Michael had left behind. His wife, Rebecca, came with him sometimes. She was a second-grade teacher with soft brown hair, gentle eyes, and a habit of apologizing even when nothing was her fault. Their daughter Sophie was 15, quiet and observant. She loved sketching birds and sitting beside me on the porch swing without needing to fill the silence. Those visits made the house feel alive again. Then Ethan began offering help in small ways. "Mom, why don't I set up automatic payments for your utilities?" he asked one afternoon while sorting mail at my kitchen table. You shouldn't have to worry about due dates. I've paid bills since before you learned your multiplication tables, I said. He laughed. I know, but Dad always handled the online stuff near the end, didn't he? That was true. Michael had been better with computers than I was. I could manage email and online banking, but I still preferred paper statements, a checkbook register, and a pen. Ethan leaned forward, voice soft. I just don't want you stressed. That became his phrase. I just don't want you stressed. When he asked for my online banking password, he said it. When he suggested I give him a spare house key, he said it. When he offered to keep copies of my insurance papers in case of emergency, he said it. And because he was my son, I heard care instead of control. I gave him the spare key from the blue ceramic bowl by the door. I wrote down the password to my bank account on a yellow sticky note and watched him fold it carefully into his wallet. I showed him where I kept Michael's death certificate, the house deed, my will, and the folder marked important documents. That folder was in the bottom drawer of Michael's old roll-top desk. I remember Ethan standing there longer than necessary, his hand resting on the drawer handle. This is everything he asked. Everything important, I said. He nodded, but there was something in his face I did not understand then. Not greed exactly. Not yet. More like calculation hiding behind concern. A few weeks later, he brought over a small black notebook. For your appointments, he said. Write things down so you don't have to keep them all in your head. I smiled because it seemed thoughtful. I had always loved notebooks. Then he began reminding me of things before I forgot them. Mom, don't forget your dentist appointment Tuesday. Mom, remember property tax paperwork comes in October. Mom, you asked me to check the furnace filter. Sometimes he was right. Sometimes I had mentioned those things, but other times I had no memory of asking him anything. At first, I laughed it off. Well, maybe I'm getting old, I said once. Ethan looked at me with a seriousness that made the room feel cooler. You're not old, he said, but you've had a lot on your mind since Dad. It sounded kind. It sounded reasonable. But slowly, without my noticing, he became the person who remembered things for me. He became the person Rebecca called when she wanted to know if I had plans. He became the person who explained my bills, my appointments, my bank notices, even my moods. One Saturday morning, I came downstairs and found him already in my kitchen. He was standing by the counter drinking coffee from Michael's old mug. I stopped at the foot of the stairs. Ethan! He turned and smiled. Morning, Mom. How did you get in? He held up the spare key. You told me to come check the sink. Remember? You said it was dripping. I stared at the faucet. It was dry. I don't remember calling you. His smile softened, and that softness unsettled me more than anger would have. That's okay, he said. That's why I'm here. At the time, I told myself he meant it lovingly. I told myself I was lucky. So many women my age had children who never called, never visited, never noticed if the porch light burned out or the gutters overflowed. My son cared. That was what I kept telling myself. But looking back now, I understand something painful. Control does not always enter your life like a thief breaking a window. Sometimes it walks in through the front door with a spare key you handed over yourself, and sometimes it calls you Mom while it does. The first missing letter seemed too small to worry about. It was a white envelope from Huntington Bank, the kind that usually arrived during the first week of every month. I had received paper statements for years because I liked holding proof in my hands. Michael used to tease me for that. Marjorie, he would say, tapping the computer screen, the whole world is going digital, and the whole world can lose a password, I would answer. He would laugh, kiss the top of my head, and leave my paper files alone. So, when the bank statement did not arrive that first week in September, I noticed. Not because I was anxious by nature, but because routines had become my way of keeping steady after Michael's death. The mail came at roughly 2 o'clock. I walked to the curb at 2:15. Bills went in the brass tray by the phone. Personal letters went on the kitchen table. Bank statements went unopened into my desk drawer until Saturday morning when I balanced my checkbook with tea and toast. That week, there was no statement. I waited another day, then another. By Friday, I called the bank. Yes, Mrs. Whitaker, the young woman on the phone told me. Your statement was mailed on the 2nd. The 2nd, I repeated. Are you sure? Yes, ma'am. To your Ashbury Lane address. I looked through the mail tray again, even though I had already checked it 3 times. Well, maybe it got delayed, I said. That can happen, she answered kindly. I thanked her and hung up, but something in me did not settle. The next day, Ethan stopped by with Rebecca and Sophie. He brought chicken noodle soup from a deli I liked, though I had not been sick. Rebecca carried a lemon pound cake wrapped in foil. Sophie drifted toward the porch sketchbook under her arm. I mentioned the missing bank statement while Ethan stood by the refrigerator. He did not turn around right away. Missing? He asked. Yes. They said they mailed it. He shut the refrigerator door slowly. Mom, you told me last week you wanted everything switched to online statements. I blinked. No, I didn't. His face softened immediately as if he had been expecting that answer. You did, he said, gently. We were sitting right here. You said paper was getting to be too much clutter. I looked at Rebecca. She lowered her eyes to the cake pan. I don't remember that, I said. Ethan walked over and touched my shoulder. That's okay. You've had a lot on your mind. There it was again. That phrase that wrapped itself around my throat like a silk scarf. A few days later, the electric bill did not come either. I found out only because a reminder email appeared on my computer. The bill was due in 4 days. I printed it annoyed with myself and drove to the payment office downtown because I had always liked paying certain bills in person. It gave me a reason to get out, talk to someone, feel like I was still participating in the world. At the counter, the clerk smiled and said, Looks like this account was already set up for automatic payment. That can't be right, I said. I didn't authorize that. She glanced at the screen. It was updated last month. By whom? She hesitated. There's a N, authorized user listed, Ethan Whitaker. That can't be right, I said. I didn't authorize that. She glanced at the screen. It was updated last month. By whom? She hesitated. There's an authorized user listed, Ethan Whitaker. I drove home slowly, both hands tight on the steering wheel. When I called Ethan, he sounded tired. Mom, we discussed this. No, Ethan. You discussed automatic payments for gas and water, not electric. A pause. Then a sigh. Mom, I'm not going to argue with you. You asked me to simplify things. I did. I would remember giving permission. Would you? He asked. The words were quiet, not cruel exactly. That was what made them dangerous. I sat at my kitchen table staring at the phone after he hung up. The room around me looked the same, yellow curtains. Copper kettle Michael's mug on the shelf. Sophie's childhood drawing still held to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a strawberry. But something had shifted. It was as if a familiar house had tilted slightly, and I was the only one who could feel it. Then things began moving. The folder with my homeowner's insurance papers was not in the second drawer where I kept it. I found it later in the bottom drawer beneath old appliance manuals. My prescription bottle for blood pressure medicine appeared in the bathroom cabinet instead of the kitchen basket where I always kept morning pills. The checkbook I stored in my desk was tucked inside a cookbook on the pantry shelf. Each time I stood frozen with the object in my hand, trying to trace my own steps backward. Had I moved it? Could I have moved it? At 68, I knew memory could slip. I had forgotten names at church. I had walked into rooms and forgotten why. I had once put the cinnamon in the refrigerator and the butter in the spice cabinet, then laughed so hard I had to sit down. But this felt different. These were not small lapses. These were important things, patterned things. Things that made me doubt not only where I put my belongings, but whether I could trust my own mind. And Ethan was always there to explain them. "Mom, you called me because you couldn't find that folder." "No, I didn't." "Yes, you did. You told me you were afraid you'd miss your pills, so I moved them to the bathroom." "I never asked you to move my medicine." "You did, Mom." "Maybe you were tired." Rebecca started calling more often after that. At first, her voice was gentle. "Marjorie, Ethan mentioned you were having trouble keeping track of a few things. He exaggerates," I said, trying to sound light. "I know he worries. He just loves you." "I know." But the more I defended myself, the more careful Rebecca's voice became, as if I were a child holding scissors. One afternoon, she asked, "Do you think maybe grief has been affecting your concentration?" I wanted to say grief had affected many things. It had made my bed too large and my evenings too quiet. It had made grocery shopping painful because I still reached for Michael's cereal. But grief had not made me careless with bank statements. It had not moved my checkbook into the pantry. Instead, I said, "I know where I put my things." There was silence on the line. Then Rebecca said softly, "Of course." That of course broke something in me, because it did not mean she believed me. It meant she had decided not to upset me. The next incident happened at the pharmacy. I went to pick up a refill, and the pharmacist frowned at his screen. "This was picked up yesterday, Mrs. Whitaker." "No, it wasn't." He looked again. "By Ethan Whitaker." My stomach tightened. "Did he sign for it?" "Yes, ma'am." I stepped aside while another customer came forward. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. My hands felt cold inside my gloves. When I confronted Ethan that evening, he did not deny it. "I picked it up because you asked me to." I did not. "Mom." Just one word, said with disappointment, said as if my denial hurt him. "I had lunch with Nancy yesterday," I said. "Then I went to the community center. I never called you." He rubbed his forehead. "You left a voicemail." "Then play it." His eyes flicked away. "I deleted it after I handled it," he said. Something inside me sharpened. For the first time, I did not apologize. I did not laugh nervously or blame age or grief or stress. I simply looked at my son and said, "Don't pick up my medicine again without asking me." His face changed so quickly I almost missed it. The softness disappeared. For 1 second, his eyes went flat. Then he smiled. "Of course, Mom." But after that, he stopped looking surprised when I challenged him. He began looking prepared. Soon, I noticed people treating me differently. At church, Mrs. Holloway touched my arm and asked if I had driven myself. At the community center, a volunteer reminded me twice where the restroom was, though I had been volunteering there longer than she had been alive. My cousin Linda called from Dayton and said, "Ethan told me you've been having some forgetful spells." I stood in my hallway with the phone pressed to my ear, staring at the family photos on the wall. "He told you that?" "He's worried, honey." "We all are. We all are." 3 words. A door closing. That night, I took out a yellow legal pad from Michael's desk and wrote at the top, "Things I know are true." Then I listed everything. The bank statement was mailed September 2nd and never reached me. Electric bill changed to automatic payment without my permission. Insurance folder moved. Medicine moved. Checkbook moved. Ethan picked up prescription and claimed I asked. Ethan told Linda I was forgetful. When I finished, my hand was shaking. Not from confusion, from clarity. because for the first time I understood that I was not losing my memory. I was losing witnesses, and my son was making sure of it. The dinner happened on the first Sunday of October. I remember because the maple tree in my front yard had just started turning red at the tips, and I had spent most of the afternoon making pot roast the way Michael liked it, slow cooked with carrots, onions, potatoes, and too much black pepper. Sunday dinners had always been my way of keeping the family stitched together. After Michael died, I held onto them even tighter. That evening, Ethan arrived first. He stepped inside carrying a bottle of sparkling cider and kissed my cheek. "Smells good, Mom. Your father would say it needs more salt. He said that about everything." We both laughed, and for one small moment I almost forgot the legal pad hidden inside Michael's desk. I almost forgot the missing mail, the moved papers, the pharmacy, the phone calls. Ethan looked like my son again, handsome, tired from work, smiling at the smell of home. Then Rebecca came in behind him with Sophie. Rebecca hugged me carefully, the way people hug someone they believe might break. Sophie gave me a real hug, tight and warm, then whispered, "Hi, Grandma." "Hi, sweetheart." Rebecca hugged me carefully, the way people hug someone they believe might break. Sophie gave me a real hug, tight and warm, then whispered, "Hi, Grandma." "Hi, sweetheart." My cousin Linda drove in from Dayton. Ethan had invited her without telling me. He said it was a surprise. My younger brother Frank came too, along with his wife Carol. Soon my dining room was full of coats on chairs, voices in the hallway, and the clatter of plates being set out. I should have felt happy. Instead, I felt watched. Every time I reached for something, someone noticed. When I opened the wrong drawer, looking for serving spoons, Rebecca quickly said, "They're over here, Marjorie," in a tone too soft for a simple correction. When I asked Frank if he wanted coffee after dinner, he chuckled and said, "You already asked me that, sis." I had not. I was sure I had not. But Ethan glanced up from carving the pot roast and gave me that same patient smile. I said nothing. We sat down to eat, and for the first 20 minutes, everything was ordinary enough. Frank complained about his knees. Linda talked about her neighbor's new dog. Sophie pushed carrots around her plate and watched her father more than she ate. Then Rebecca mentioned a school fundraiser, and Ethan used that opening like a man stepping onto a stage. "Speaking of money," he said lightly. "Mom, did you ever find that bank statement you were worried about?" The table quieted just enough for me to feel it. I set down my fork. "No, I didn't." Linda frowned. "What bank statement?" "It's nothing," Ethan said quickly, though his voice carried across the table. Mom misplaced one of her statements and got a little anxious. "I didn't misplace it," I said. "It never arrived." Ethan's expression changed not much, just enough. Concern settled over his face like a mask. "Mom, we talked about this." "No, Ethan, you talked." I listened. Rebecca's eyes widened. Carol looked down at her plate. Ethan put his fork beside his plate very slowly. "I'm not trying to upset you." "I'm not upset. I'm correcting you." The silence became heavier. I could feel heat rising in my face, not from anger alone, but from the humiliation of having to defend something as simple as the mail in my own house. Linda reached toward my hand. "Marjorie, honey, maybe it's just a misunderstanding." I pulled my hand back gently. "It is not a misunderstanding." Ethan sighed. That sigh did more damage than shouting could have. It told the room he had been patient. It told them this was not the first time. It told them I was becoming difficult. "Mom, he said you asked me to switch several things online because the paper mail was overwhelming you." "I never said that." "You did." "No." "Mom." One word again. Soft. Heavy. Accusing without sounding cruel. I looked around the table. Frank avoided my eyes. Carol pressed her lips together. Rebecca looked worried. Linda looked heartbroken. Sophie looked scared. Nobody looked convinced. So I said the thing I had not planned to say. Then explain the money. Ethan went still. Rebecca turned to him. What money? The $400 withdrawn from my checking account last month? I said. And the $200 before that? I asked Ethan about it, and he told me I must have taken cash for church donations. I did not. Ethan let out a small laugh, but there was no humor in it. Mom, please? No. Don't please me. I know what I give to church. I write it down. Frank cleared his throat. Marjorie, maybe you took cash and forgot to record it? I looked at my brother, the boy I had once taught to tie his shoes, now staring at me like I was a stranger, making trouble at dinner. I have balanced a checkbook longer than Ethan has been alive, I said. Ethan leaned back in his chair. That's exactly the problem. The words landed cold. What does that mean? I asked. He looked around the table before answering, making sure everyone was with him. It means you're used to doing everything yourself, and I respect that. We all do. But lately, when I try to help you accuse me, you call me about bills we already handled. You forget conversations. You move things around and then blame me. That is not true. He looked wounded. See? Rebecca whispered, Ethan. But he kept going. I didn't want to bring this up tonight, but I think we need to be honest as a family. My chest tightened. There it was, as a family. The phrase people use when they are about to take something from one person and make it sound like love. Ethan turned toward Linda and Frank. Mom has been struggling more than she admits. I am sitting right here, I said. I know, Mom. Then speak to me, not about me. He closed his eyes for a second, as if gathering patience from some deep well. You called me last week because you couldn't find your checkbook. No, I didn't. You left your blood pressure medicine in the bathroom and then insisted someone moved it. Because someone did. You accused me of stealing your mail. I said my mail was missing. You told Rebecca the electric company changed your account without permission. They did. Mom, he said, voice breaking slightly. That's what scares me. You really believe these things. Rebecca's hand went to her mouth. Linda's eyes filled with tears. Frank looked at Ethan and asked quietly, How long has this been going on? I turned to my brother. Frank, don't ask him. Ask me. But Frank did not ask me. Ethan lowered his voice. A few months. I thought it was grief at first, then stress. But now I'm worried it's more than that. More than that. The room seemed to shrink. I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. I could hear Sophie's fork scrape against her plate. I could hear my own breathing. I am not confused, I said. Nobody answered. I am not confused, I repeated louder. Ethan reached across the table as if to calm me. Mom getting upset doesn't help. I stood up so quickly my chair legs scraped the floor. I am upset because my son is lying about me in my own dining room. Rebecca flinched. Carol whispered, Oh, Marjorie. Ethan's face hardened for half a second. Then the sadness returned. That's what I mean, he said softly. This isn't like you. Those words nearly broke me. Not because they were true, but because everyone else believed they were. Sophie suddenly pushed back from the table. I need some air, she said. Rebecca reached for her. Sophie. But Sophie was already walking toward the porch. I wanted to follow her. I wanted to leave the room, leave the food, leave every pitying face. Instead, I stood there with my hands gripping the back of my chair, feeling like the walls of my home had turned into witnesses for the wrong side. Linda finally spoke. Marjorie, we love you. Maybe it wouldn't hurt to see a doctor, just to make sure. I looked at her, then at Frank, then at Rebecca. And if the doctor says I'm fine? No one answered quickly enough. That silence told me everything. Ethan stood and came around the table. He placed a hand on my shoulder. I wanted to shrug it off, but I knew if I did, they would call it agitation. If I raised my voice, they would call it confusion. If I cried, they would call it fragility. So I stood perfectly still. "My mother is proud," Ethan said to the room. "She always has been, but pride can make people hide when they need help." His hand tightened slightly on my shoulder. To anyone else, it might have looked comforting. To me, it felt like a warning. Dinner ended early. People hugged me too long before leaving. Linda told me to call her any time, then looked at Ethan as if he were the one who would decide whether I could. Frank promised to come visit soon. Carol took leftover pound cake and would not meet my eyes. Rebecca helped clear plates in silence. When she finally spoke, her voice was trembling. "Marjorie, Ethan is scared. That's all." I looked at her. "Are you?" She froze. "Are you scared because of what you've seen?" I asked, "or because of what he told you?" She did not answer. After they left, I found Sophie's napkin folded beside her plate. Inside it was a tiny pencil drawing of my front porch. Underneath, in small letters, she had written, "I believe you." I pressed that napkin to my chest and stood in the empty dining room until the tears finally came. That night, I added one more line to my yellow legal pad. October 1st. Ethan turned the family against me at dinner. Then, after a long pause, I wrote another sentence beneath it. But Sophie knows something is wrong. 2 days after that Sunday dinner, Ethan called and asked if he could come by. He did not say why. That alone told me there was a reason. In the past, Ethan had never asked to visit. He simply appeared with groceries, a toolbox, or a paper bag from the deli using his spare key as though my home had quietly become an extension of his own. But that Tuesday afternoon, his voice on the phone was careful. "Mom, I think we should talk." "About what?" A pause. "About making sure you're protected." I stood at the kitchen counter, looking at the yellow legal pad half hidden beneath the newspaper. My first instinct was to say no. My second instinct was to say yes, and watch closely. "What time?" I asked. "6'll make coffee. You don't have to do that." "I know," I said. 6. After I hung up, I placed the legal pad back in Michael's desk and locked the drawer. The key went into the pocket of my cardigan. Then I walked through my house room by room, touching ordinary things to steady myself, the back of Michael's chair, the edge of the dining table, the banister Ethan used to slide down when he was 7. I needed to remember that this house was not just property. It was a life. My life. At 6 o'clock exactly, Ethan knocked. That surprised me too. He had not knocked in months. When I opened the door, he stood on the porch in his work clothes, holding a leather folder against his chest. His tie was loosened, and his face carried the weary expression of a man doing something painful but necessary. A performance, I thought. Then immediately I scolded myself for thinking such a thing about my own son. "Come in," I said. He stepped inside and looked around as if checking whether anyone else was there. "Rebecca didn't come." "No. I thought it should just be us first." First. The word settled in my stomach. I poured coffee because my hands needed something to do. Ethan sat at the kitchen table, the leather folder placed neatly in front of him. He did not open it right away. He watched me move between counter and cabinet. "You're limping," he said. "My knee is stiff from standing too long Sunday. You should have let Rebecca help more," I managed. "I know you like saying that." I set his coffee down harder than I meant to. A little spilled onto the saucer. His eyes went to it. I wiped it quickly with a napkin. "See?" he said softly. I stopped. "See what? Nothing." I just mean you're tired. No, Ethan, you didn't mean tired. You meant clumsy. He rubbed his face. Mom, this is exactly why I wanted to talk. I sat across from him. He opened the folder. Inside were papers clipped and organized. Ethan had always loved organized papers. Even as a boy, he lined up his crayons by color and sharpened every pencil before the first day of school. I used to think that meant discipline. Now I wondered if control had simply been wearing a child's face. I spoke with someone, he said. Someone. An attorney. My fingers tightened around my mug. Your attorney? A family attorney. His name is Paul Mercer. He handles estate planning, elder care arrangements, things like that. Elder care, I repeated. He leaned forward. Please don't make the words the enemy. A family attorney. His name is Paul Mercer. He handles estate planning, elder care arrangements, things like that. Elder care? I repeated. He leaned forward. Mom, please don't make the words the enemy. The words are not the enemy. But sometimes people hide behind them. His mouth pressed into a thin line. Then the soft expression returned. I'm trying to help you avoid a crisis. What crisis? What if you miss a tax notice? What if you forget medication? What if someone scams you over the phone? What if you fall and nobody knows? What if my own son decides I'm helpless and starts arranging my life without asking me? He sat back. For a moment, silence filled the kitchen. Then he pulled one page from the folder and slid it toward me. It's a durable power of attorney. I did not touch it. Ethan waited. When I still did not reach for the paper, he tapped it with 2 fingers. It would only let me step in if needed. If needed by whom? By you. And who decides that? His gaze held mine. Ideally, you would. I am deciding now. I don't want to sign. His sigh came again, slow and wounded. You haven't even read it. I can read it without signing it. Of course. But he did not look pleased. I pulled the paper closer. The print was small, dense, formal. I saw words like financial accounts, real property, medical decisions, legal authority, transfer access. My eyes caught on real property and stayed there. Why does this mention my house? Because if something happened, I'd need authority to pay insurance taxes, repairs. I pay those myself. For now. I looked up. He seemed to realize he had said too much. He softened his voice. Mom, Dad would want you protected. That was the first time anger truly moved through me like fire. Do not use your father as a signature stamp. His face changed, only for a second, but I saw it. The little boy was gone. The grieving son was gone. In their place sat a man who had expected obedience and had not received it. I'm not using Dad, he said. Yes, you are. I'm the one who was here after he died. I was here too, Ethan. I was the one who slept in the bed he never came back to. I was the one who folded his shirts. I was the one who folded his shirts. I was the one who signed the funeral papers. Do not speak to me as if grief made you the adult and me the child. His jaw tightened. Then he reached into the folder and took out another document. This is just a medical release form, just one who signed the funeral papers. Do not speak to me as if grief made you the adult and me the child. His jaw tightened. Then he reached into the folder and took out another document. This is just a medical release form, just so I can speak with Dr. Harris if there are concerns. Dr. Harris speaks with me. What if you don't understand what he says? I laughed once. It surprised both of us. I managed an entire public library budget for nearly 3 decades. I can understand a blood pressure appointment. That was before. Before... What? Before you started forgetting things. The room went still. There it was no longer dressed as concern. I pushed the papers back toward him. I'm not signing anything tonight. His voice dropped. You're making this harder than it needs to be. For whom? For everyone. I stood. That was the moment his phone buzzed on the table. He glanced down before turning it over, but not fast enough. I saw the name Paul Mercer. Attorney. My chest tightened. You said you spoke with him? I said. Did you already schedule something? Ethan put the phone into his pocket. A consultation. Thursday morning. For you? For us. I did not agree to that. I knew you'd resist. I stared at him. He said it like resistance was proof. Like my right to say no had already been labeled a symptom. You made an appointment with a lawyer for me without my permission. I made an appointment to protect you. No, Ethan. You made an appointment to pressure me. His face reddened. Do you hear yourself? Yes, I said, clearly. He stood too. For the first time in months, he looked less calm than I did. What do you think I'm doing? He asked. Trying to steal from you. Is that what this is? I did not answer quickly enough. His expression hardened. Unbelievable, he whispered, after everything I've done. What have you done, Ethan? He leaned over the table, palms flat on the wood Michael had sanded by hand 30 years earlier. I have taken calls from the bank. I have paid bills. I have picked up medicine. I have checked on you. I have covered for you when you forgot things so people wouldn't worry more than they already do. Covered for me? I repeated. Yes. Or created a story about me. He looked at me as if I had slapped him. Then he gathered the papers with quick, sharp movements. Fine, he said. Don't sign. But when something happens, don't say I didn't try. He walked to the door. I followed, not because I wanted to, but because I refused to let him storm through my home as if he owned the ending of every conversation. At the door, he turned back. Thursday at 10, he said. Paul Mercer's office. I think you should come. I won't. You should also see Dr. Harris. I will make my own appointment. His eyes narrowed slightly. Will you remember to... I held the door open. Good night, Ethan. He left without kissing my cheek. After his car pulled away, I locked the door. Then I locked the deadbolt. Then, after standing there for a long moment, I slid the chain across too, though I had not used it in years. My hands were shaking. I went back to Michael's desk and unlocked the drawer. The yellow legal pad waited inside like a witness that had not yet been called. I wrote everything down. October 3rd. Ethan brought durable power of attorney papers. Wanted control over financial accounts, medical information, and real property. Had already contacted attorney Paul Mercer. Tried to use Michael's name. Said I was forgetting things. Said I was making it harder for everyone. I paused, then added one more line. I need my own lawyer. The thought frightened me. It also steadied me. I opened the small address book I still kept beside the phone. Most of the names inside were written in ink that had faded over the years. Some belonged to people who had died. Some belonged to Christmas card friends. But near the back, under M, was a name I had not called since Michael's estate papers were settled. Patricia Monroe, attorney at law. Michael had trusted her. More than that, he had once told me while sitting on the porch swing with a blanket over his knees. If anything ever feels wrong after I'm gone, call Patricia before you call anyone else. At the time, I had kissed his hand and told him not to talk like that. Now I understood. I picked up the phone. My finger hovered over the number. Then I heard Michael's voice in my memory, tired but clear. Never sign anything because someone you love is rushing you. So I dialed. Patricia Monroe answered on the fourth ring. For one strange second, when I heard her voice, I almost hung up. Not because I did not want help, but because saying the words aloud would make them real. A woman can carry fear quietly inside her for days, even weeks, convincing herself she is being dramatic. But the moment she tells another person, the fear steps out into the room and becomes evidence. Patricia Monroe's office. She said. Patricia, I whispered. It's Marjorie Whittaker. There was a pause, then her voice softened. Marjorie. My goodness, it's been a long time. Yes. How are you? That simple question nearly undid me. I looked around my kitchen, at the leather folder Ethan had left behind at the coffee stain, still drying on the saucer, at the locked drawer where my yellow legal pad waited. I'm not sure I said. Patricia did not fill the silence with polite noise. That was one of the things Michael had respected about her. She listened before she advised. Tell me what happened, she said. I sat down slowly and told her as much as I could without crying. I told her about Ethan moving bills online, about the missing bank statement, about the prescription he claimed I asked him to pick up, about Sunday dinner, about the power of attorney papers. I told her he had scheduled a meeting with his own attorney without my permission. When I finished, Patricia was quiet for several seconds. Then she said, Marjorie, do not sign anything. I haven't. Good. Do not attend that meeting with his attorney unless you have your own representation present. I told him I wouldn't go. Good again. Her calmness steadied me. Am I being foolish? I asked. Is this just a son worrying too much? Patricia exhaled slowly. Concern does not require secrecy. Help does not require pressure. And love does not need legal authority before breakfast. I closed my eyes. For days, I had been waiting for someone to say something that made sense. Not something sweet, not something soothing, something true. What do I do? I asked. First, write everything down. I already started. Excellent. Dates, times, exact words if you remember them. Second, call your bank and ask for a printed record of any account access or changes. Third, make an appointment with Dr. Harris yourself. You want current documentation that you are managing your own medical and financial decisions. You think it will come to that. I think your son is already trying to create a record. We need your record to be stronger. My hand tightened around the phone. Your son. Those two words hurt more than I expected. Not Ethan. Not the person pressuring you. Your son. Because that was the cruel center of it. This was not a stranger. This was not a salesman or a scammer or a distant cousin circling an inheritance. This was my child. The baby I had rocked through ear infections. The boy who cried when his goldfish died. The teenager who once left a note on my pillow saying, "Thank you for loving me even when I'm awful." Marjorie, Patricia said gently, "Are you still there?" "Yes. Is there anyone nearby you trust?" I thought of Sophie's folded napkin. I thought of Rebecca's silence. Then I thought of my neighbor, Nancy Collins. "Nancy," I said, "across the street." "Good. Tell her enough that she knows to pay attention. Don't isolate yourself." After we hung up, I sat at the table for a long time. Then I did exactly what Patricia told me. The next morning, I called Dr. Stephen Harris's office and scheduled a checkup. I called the bank and requested printed records. Then after lunch, I crossed the street to Nancy Collins's house with a pumpkin loaf wrapped in foil, because even in crisis, I was still a Midwestern woman who believed bad news traveled better with baked goods. Nancy opened the door wearing a denim shirt, house slippers, and reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. "Well, look at you," she said. "If that's pumpkin bread, I'm letting you in." "I need to talk to you," I said. Her smile faded. She stepped aside immediately. Nancy's house smelled like cinnamon tea and furniture polish. She had lived across from us for 19 years. Her husband George had died the year before Michael. The two men had once argued for an entire summer about whose lawnmower was louder, then ended up sharing tools by fall. Nancy poured tea. I told her the shorter version first. Then when she did not interrupt or give me pitying looks, I told her more. When I mentioned Ethan entering my house with the spare key, her expression changed. "How often does he come when you're not home?" she asked. My cup paused halfway to my mouth. "What?" Nancy leaned back. "Marjorie, I thought you knew." A cold line moved down my spine. "Knew what?" She looked toward her front window, the one facing my house. "I've seen Ethan's car in your driveway several times while you were gone." I set the cup down carefully. "When?" "Mostly weekday mornings, sometimes around lunchtime." I remember because I walked to the mailbox about the same time every day, and I'd see his car there. "Are you sure I wasn't home?" Nancy gave me a look only an old friend can give, a mixture of patience and warning. "Marjorie, I saw you leave. Then later, I saw him arrive." My throat tightened. How many times? She thought for a moment. At least 4, maybe 5. I pressed one hand flat against her table. "He told me he only came when I asked." Nancy's mouth tightened. "Then he lied." The words sat between us plain and ugly. I wanted to defend him. Some old mothering instinct rose in me, desperate and foolish. I wanted to say, maybe he had reasons. Maybe he was checking pipes or dropping off papers or fixing something without wanting credit. But then I remembered the insurance folder in the wrong drawer, the checkbook in the pantry, the missing letters. "Do you have cameras?" I asked. Nancy nodded toward the front porch. "George installed one after those package thefts a few years back. It catches my driveway and part of your front walk." My pulse quickened. "Does it keep recordings?" "For a while, yes. My grandson set it up. I don't know much about it, but I can call him." Could it show Ethan entering my house? It might. For the first time in weeks, the room seemed to open around me. Not with relief exactly, but with possibility. Nancy reached across the table and covered my hand. "Marjorie, why didn't you tell me sooner?" I looked down. "Because I was afraid you'd believe him too." Her eyes filled, but her voice stayed firm. "I've known you 19 years. You remember everybody's birthday, every casserole dish you lend out, and which neighbor likes extra nutmeg in apple pie. I don't believe you're confused just because Ethan says so." I had held myself together through missing mail, moved medicine, dinner table humiliation, and legal threats. But kindness nearly broke me. I looked away quickly, blinking hard. Nancy did not fuss. She simply patted my hand once and stood. "I'm calling my grandson." Her grandson, Tyler, came over that evening. He was a college student with curly hair, a hoodie, and the solemn concentration of someone who understood technology better than conversation. He sat at Nancy's small desk and opened the security camera app on her computer. "How far back do you need?" he asked. Nancy looked at me. "September," I said. Tyler frowned. "It may not go that far unless clips were motion-triggered and saved." He clicked through dates. I stood behind him, arms folded tightly against my chest. There were clips of delivery trucks, children on bicycles, Nancy watering mums, a stray cat crossing her porch at dawn. Then Tyler opened one from September 12th. A dark sedan pulled into my driveway. Ethan's car. My son stepped out, looked toward the street, then walked to my front door. He did not carry groceries. He did not carry tools. He used a key and went inside. The timestamp showed 10:43 a.m. I knew exactly where I had been that morning, volunteering at the community center. Nancy whispered, "Oh, Marjorie." Tyler opened another clip. September 18th. Ethan again. This time, he carried a flat envelope when he left. Another clip. September 26th. Ethan entering through the side door. Another. October 2nd. The day before he brought the power of attorney papers. I watched each one in silence. The strange thing was, I did not cry. I did not gasp. I did not say, "How could he?" Somewhere deep inside, I already knew. What I felt instead was a terrible kind of confirmation. The ground beneath me was not steady, but at least I could finally see the crack. "Can you save these?" Nancy asked. Tyler nodded. "I can download them to a flash drive." I thought of Patricia. "Yes," I said. "Please." That night, Nancy walked me back across the street. I noticed my house differently as we approached the porch light, the curtains, the front door Ethan had opened again and again without my knowledge. At the steps, Nancy touched my arm. "Do you want me to come in with you?" I shook my head. "No. I need to do something." Inside, I went straight to the small ceramic bowl by the door. The spare key was gone, of course. Ethan had it. But the chain lock was still mine. I slid it into place. Then I went to Michael's desk, opened the drawer, and wrote on the yellow legal pad. October 4th, Nancy confirmed Ethan entered my house while I was away. Camera shows him using key. At least 4 times. One recording shows him leaving with an envelope. I paused, listening to the old house settle around me. Then I wrote one more sentence. The camera saw what everyone refused to see. The next morning, I woke before sunrise with Nancy's words still echoing in my mind. Then he lied. There are sentences that do not simply pass through you. They settle in your bones. They change the way the light falls across familiar rooms. They make the kettle sound louder, the floorboards seem older, the silence feel less peaceful. I stood in my kitchen in my robe holding my tea with both hands staring at the back door. Ethan had used that door as a boy when he ran in from the yard covered in grass stains. He had slammed it as a teenager after arguments about curfew. He had walked through it carrying flowers the day Michael came home from the hospital for the last time. Now I wondered how many times he had used it while I was gone. I wondered which drawers he had opened. I wondered what he had taken. Worst of all, I wondered how long he had looked at my life, not as a home, but as an opportunity. After breakfast, I took out the yellow legal pad and read every line I had written so far. Missing mail, moved medicine, bank changes, family dinner, power of attorney papers, camera footage from Nancy's porch. It was no longer a list of worries. It was a pattern. Patricia had told me to write everything down, but I knew I needed more than notes. Ethan was too polished, too careful, too practiced at sounding reasonable. If this became my word against his, I already knew how the family would lean. So I began organizing. I found an old 3-ring binder from my library days, the kind I used to use for staff schedules and budget reports. On the front, I placed a blank white label and wrote one word in blue ink, record. Not Ethan, not evidence, not betrayal, just record. Because I needed to stay calm. I needed to think like the woman I had been before everyone decided I was fragile. The woman who managed payroll, handled city audits, trained young employees, and once found a missing set of rare donated books by following a trail of incorrect catalog numbers across 3 departments. I knew how to track details. I printed bank emails. I copied dates from my checkbook. I placed pharmacy receipts into plastic sleeves. I wrote summaries of every conversation I could remember leaving space for exact times when I found them. I labeled each section carefully. Mail, banking, medication, house access, family statements, attorney pressure. By noon, the binder had weight. That weight comforted me. For weeks, Ethan had made me feel as if truth were slipping through my fingers. Now I could hold it. I hid the binder in the last place Ethan would look, the cedar chest at the foot of my bed beneath Michael's old winter sweaters. Ethan never liked going through his father's things. Whether from grief or guilt, I did not know. Either way, I used it. The yellow legal pad I moved to. I tucked it inside my old sewing box beneath spools of thread buttons and baby food jars and a tomato-shaped pincushion I had owned since 1978. That afternoon, Patricia called back. I reviewed what you told me, she said. I want you to be very careful from this point forward. I am. Has Ethan mentioned the house specifically? I thought of the power of attorney paper, real property, transfer, authority. Only through documents, I said. Not directly. Then we need to find out whether he has taken any steps involving the property. How? I can do a preliminary check. But I also want you to call the county recorder's office and request copies of any recent filings connected to your address. My stomach tightened. You think he could do that without me? I think people who want control often try several doors before one opens. After we hung up, I called the Franklin County recorder's office. The woman who answered was kind but brisk. She told me how to request records and what information I needed. Nothing had officially transferred, she said, but she suggested I check again if I received any suspicious mail. Suspicious mail. I nearly laughed. If only the suspicious mail would reach me. Later that day, I drove to Dr. Harris's office for my appointment. I had known Stephen Harris for nearly 16 years. He had treated Michael's pneumonia, my blood pressure, Ethan's teenage sports injury, and half the neighborhood's seasonal allergies. His hair had gone gray at the temples, but his voice was the same gentle direct, never rushed. He examined me, reviewed my medications, asked memory questions, asked about daily tasks, bills, driving cooking appointments. I answered everything clearly. Then he set his pen down. Marjorie, has someone suggested you're having cognitive difficulties? The kindness in his voice made my throat tighten. My son has. Doctor. Harris nodded slowly. Do you feel you are no? Do you feel unsafe? I looked at him. That was the question no one else had asked. Not, are you forgetting? Not, are you stressed? Not, is your son worried? Do you feel unsafe? I folded my hands in my lap. I feel watched. I feel doubted. And I feel like someone is trying to make other people believe I can't speak for myself. His expression grew serious. I'm going to document today's visit thoroughly, he said. Based on this evaluation, I see no evidence that you lack capacity to manage your own affairs. The sentence was so clean, so solid, I almost cried. Could I have that in writing? Yes. When I left his office, I held the visit summary against my chest like a shield. That evening, Sophie came over. She did not call first. She knocked lightly 3 quick taps, then stood on my porch, wearing a school hoodie and carrying her backpack over one shoulder. Her eyes were red, as if she had cried or had not slept. Sweetheart, I said, does your mother know you're here? She looked down. She thinks I'm at Maddie's. Sophie, I know, I'm sorry, but I had to talk to you. I stepped aside and let her in. She did not sit in the living room. She went straight to the kitchen, the place where our family had always told the truth before truth became dangerous. I made hot chocolate because she was still young enough that warm milk and cocoa felt like the right answer, even when the problem was too large for it. She wrapped both hands around the mug. Grandma, she whispered, Dad is lying. I sat across from her. What did you hear? Her lower lip trembled. I wasn't trying to spy. I know. He and Mom were talking after dinner. Mom said maybe everyone was rushing things. Dad got mad. Not yelling, but that scary, quiet mad. I knew exactly what she meant. Sophie stared into the cocoa. He said you were going to ruin everything if you kept being stubborn. My hands went cold. What everything? She swallowed. The house, the room seemed to tilt. He said that. She nodded. He said he needed things settled before Christmas. He said if the family waited too long, you'd change the locks or call a lawyer. Mom asked him why he kept talking about the house, and he said, because it was the only asset that mattered. For a moment, I could not breathe. The only asset that mattered. Not my home. Not the place Michael died. Not the walls that held Ethan's childhood. An asset. Sophie wiped her cheek quickly. Then Mom said, Ethan, this sounds wrong, and Dad said she didn't understand pressure. He said there were debts. Debts? I don't know what kind. He stopped talking when he saw me in the hallway. I reached across the table and took her hand. Sophie, listen to me. You are not responsible for grown people's choices. I know, but no. Hear me. You are not responsible for your father's choices, your mother's fear, or my safety. You did the right thing telling me, but I don't want you putting yourself in danger. Her eyes widened. Do you think Dad would hurt me? I hesitated. The answer I wanted to give was no. Instinctively, fiercely grandmotherly no. But Ethan had already harmed truth. He had harmed trust. And sometimes people who do that do not stop where you pray they will. I think your father is desperate, I said carefully. And desperate people can become frightening when cornered. She nodded, tears falling now. I moved around the table and held her. For a few seconds, she was not 15, and I was not an old woman fighting to be believed. We were simply grandmother and granddaughter, clinging to each other in a kitchen that had heard too much. Before she left, I made her promise not to confront him. Promise me, Sophie. I promise. And don't come here secretly again. Call me from school if you need to. Or call Nancy. She gave a small laugh through tears. Mrs. Collins scares Dad. Good, I said. She scares me sometimes too. After Sophie left, I sat at the table long after her cocoa cooled. Outside, the maple leaves stirred against the dark window. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked twice and stopped. I opened the sewing box and took out the yellow legal pad. October 5th. Sophie came over. Heard Ethan say he needs the house settled before Christmas. Mentioned debts. Called my home the only asset that mattered. Rebecca may be starting to question him. I stopped writing. Then with a steadier hand, I added, the goal is the house. I looked around my kitchen, the worn cabinets, the old clock, the framed photo of Michael holding baby Ethan beneath the maple tree. For the first time, grief and anger stood side by side inside me. Ethan thought age had made me weak. He had forgotten something important. I had spent my whole life protecting this family, and now, if I had to, I would protect myself from it. Ethan waited 3 days before making his next move. That was one of the things that frightened me most about him by then, not just what he did, but the patience with which he did it. He did not rush in angrily after I refused the power of attorney papers. He did not demand to know why I had missed the appointment with Paul Mercer. He did not mention the doctor. He did not ask whether I had spoken to anyone. He simply became quiet. Quiet, I learned, can be a kind of pressure. Rebecca called once and asked if I needed groceries. Her voice sounded strained, as if someone were listening from another room. Sophie did not call at all, which told me she was keeping her promise and being careful. Nancy checked on me every morning by raising her mug from her porch when I walked to the mailbox. Patricia left one message reminding me to keep all original documents safe and not to confront Ethan alone. So I waited too. On Friday afternoon, Ethan sent a text. Family meeting, Sunday at 4. We need to talk honestly. Please don't make this harder than it has to be. I stared at the words for a long time. Not, can we talk? Not, are you available, family meeting, as if I were a matter to be discussed. I did not answer right away. Instead, I called Patricia. "His gathering the family again," I said. "Where my house, apparently." He didn't ask, but that's what he means. "Do you want to refuse?" I looked around my living room. Michael's framed navy photo stood on the mantel. Sophie's baby picture sat beside it. A basket of folded laundry waited on the sofa. Everything in that room was mine, and yet I felt as if people were already arranging chairs for my trial. "No," I said finally. "I want to know what he says when he thinks everyone is watching me." Patricia was silent for a moment. "Then do not argue more than necessary. Let him speak. Let him overstate. Take notes afterward. If he brings documents, do not sign. If he brings professionals, ask for names and credentials." "Will you come?" "Not yet," she said. "If I appear too soon, he may retreat. We need to understand the full plan." That made sense, but it scared me. Sunday came gray and cold. I cleaned the house because old habits are stubborn. Even when people come to accuse you, you still do not want dust on the coffee table. I made coffee, but no food. Sunday dinners were finished for now. I could not bear to feed people who had come to measure my competence between bites. At exactly 4, Ethan arrived with Rebecca, Sophie, Frank, Carol, Linda, and a man I did not know. The stranger wore a navy suit and carried a slim briefcase. I looked at Ethan. "Who is this?" Ethan's smile was careful. "This is Mr. Paul Mercer, the attorney." My hand tightened on the doorknob. "You brought your lawyer to my home without asking me?" Paul Mercer stepped forward before Ethan could answer. "Mrs. Whitaker, I'm only here as a neutral resource for the family." Neutral? That word almost made me laugh. I stepped aside. "Then come in and be neutral in the living room." Sophie's eyes met mine quickly. She looked pale. Rebecca avoided looking at me at all. Everyone sat as if the seating arrangement had been planned. Ethan and Paul Mercer took the sofa. Rebecca sat beside Ethan, but left a few inches between them. Frank and Carol sat in the armchairs. Linda perched on the edge of the piano bench. Sophie sat closest to me on the ottoman near my chair. That small choice gave me strength. Ethan began. "Mom, first, I want you to know this comes from love." I said nothing. He folded his hands. "Everyone here cares about you. No one wants to take away your independence." That was exactly what people said when they were preparing to do it. "But there have been incidents," he continued. "More than I think the family understands." Frank leaned forward. "What kind of incidents?" Ethan reached into a folder and took out a printed page. A list. My stomach tightened. He had made his own record, too. September 2nd, he read. Mom claimed her bank statement was stolen, though she had previously requested online statements. "That is not true," I said. Ethan looked at me sadly. "Mom, please let me finish." Paul Mercer made a small note on his legal pad. I saw it. Everyone saw it. So I sat back. Ethan continued. September 10th. She called me because she couldn't locate her checkbook. Later, she found it in the pantry. "I never called you." He ignored that. September 15th. Medication found in the wrong room. She became convinced someone had moved it. Sophie's hands clenched in her lap. September 20th, Ethan said. She became upset at the pharmacy because I picked up a prescription she asked me to collect. I did not ask you. This time, Paul Mercer spoke gently. "Mrs. Whitaker, you'll have a chance to respond?" "A chance. In my own house," Ethan went on. October 1st. At dinner, Mom accused me of taking money from her account. She became agitated when family members suggested seeing a doctor. "I saw Dr. Harris," I said. That made Ethan pause. Rebecca looked up sharply. "You did?" Ethan asked. "Yes." I made my own appointment. His eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. Why didn't you tell me? Because I do not need permission to see my own doctor, Linda whispered. What did he say? I looked at my cousin. He said he sees no evidence that I lack capacity to manage my own affairs. For the first time since they arrived, the room shifted in my favor. Only slightly. But Ethan recovered quickly. That's good, he said. That's really good, Mom. But a regular checkup doesn't erase what we've all seen. What have you all seen? I asked quietly. Not what Ethan told you. What have you personally seen? No one answered. Ethan leaned forward. This is not an interrogation. No, I said. It feels more like one directed at me. Paul Mercer cleared his throat. The purpose today is to discuss practical safeguards. Sometimes families wait too long, and by the time intervention is necessary, emotions have made everything harder. What intervention? Ethan took out another paper. My eyes caught the heading, Preliminary Care and Asset Protection Plan. Asset. There it was again. He spoke carefully. No one is saying you need to leave your home tomorrow, but we need to consider whether living alone is still the safest option. My heart began to pound. Rebecca whispered, Ethan, you said this was just about bills. He gave her a brief look. It's all connected. Paul Mercer slid a document onto the coffee table. One option is for Mrs. Whitaker to voluntarily appoint Ethan as financial agent. That would allow him to manage accounts, property expenses, insurance repairs, and if needed, prepare for sale or transition. Sale, Linda said. Sophie stood. No. Everyone turned. Her face was white, but her voice was clear. No one said anything about selling Grandma's house. Ethan's expression hardened. Sophie, sit down. No, you said this was about helping her. It is. You told Mom it was about bills. Sophie. Rebecca touched his arm. Ethan, she's right. You didn't mention selling the house. No. You said this was about helping her. It is. You told Mom it was about bills. Sophie. Rebecca touched his arm. Ethan, she's right. You didn't mention selling the house. He pulled his arm away. For a second, the gentle sun vanished. Then he turned to the room with controlled sadness. This is exactly why I didn't want to discuss every possibility too soon. People panic. Mom panics. Sophie overhears things and misunderstands. I didn't misunderstand, Sophie said. I wanted to tell her to stop to protect herself, but another part of me was fiercely proud. Ethan looked at me. Mom, do you see what's happening? Your fear is affecting Sophie now. My fear, I said. Yes. You're making people choose sides. I almost smiled, not because it was funny, but because the cruelty had become so clear. It was almost clean. No, Ethan, I said. People are choosing whether to ask questions. Paul Mercer lifted a hand. Perhaps we should slow down, but Ethan did not want to slow down anymore. He had expected a weak woman cornered and trembling. He had expected the family to nod along. He had not expected Dr. Harris. He had not expected Sophie. He had not expected Rebecca to question him. So he reached for the oldest weapon he had. Mom, he said, voice low and pained. Yesterday, you told Rebecca that Dad visited you in the kitchen. The room froze. I stared at him. What Rebecca's mouth fell open. Ethan, he turned to her. You told me she said she felt Dad in the house. Rebecca looked horrified. I said she missed him. That's not the same thing. Ethan kept going anyway. You said she talks like he's still here. I talk about my husband because I loved him, I said. That is not confusion, Carol murmured. Of course not, but Ethan had already planted it. I saw it on Frank's face on Linda's. Grief and confusion were being tied together with one neat knot. Then Ethan delivered the line he must have rehearsed. My mother is not well enough to see what's happening to her. The room went painfully quiet. I looked at my son, and for the first time I understood that he was willing to bury me alive inside a story if it got him what he wanted. I did not shout. I did not cry. I stood. Everyone watched me, waiting to see if I would shake, forget, collapse, prove him right. Instead, I walked to the front door and opened it. This meeting is over. Ethan stood too. Mom, no. You brought an attorney into my home without consent. You brought documents about my property. You twisted my grief for your father into evidence against me. This meeting is over. Paul Mercer quickly gathered his papers. Frank looked stunned. Linda was crying silently. Rebecca would not stop staring at Ethan as if she had never truly seen him before. Sophie came to my side. Ethan's face was pale with anger.
You're making a mistake,
he said. I held the door open wider.
No, Ethan. I made my mistake when I gave you a key.
He stepped close enough that only I could hear his next words. You don't know what you're doing. I looked straight into his eyes. Yes, I said. I do. After they left, I locked the door, slid the chain, and stood in the silence. Then I went to the sewing box, took out the yellow legal pad, and wrote, October 8th. Ethan brought Paul Mercer to my home. Presented list of supposed confusion. Introduced asset protection plan. Mentioned sale or transition. Tried to use my grief for Michael as evidence. Rebecca questioned him. Sophie defended me. My hand paused above the page. Then I added, he is getting careless. And for the first time, that frightened me less than it should have. The letter arrived on a Wednesday morning, tucked between a grocery flyer and a church bulletin. At first, I almost missed it. It was not from Huntington Bank this time. The envelope was thicker cream-colored, with the logo of a mortgage company printed in the corner. I stood at the mailbox longer than I should have, staring at my name through the little plastic window. Marjorie E. Whitaker. My hands went cold before I even opened it. I carried the mail inside, locked the door behind me, and sat at the kitchen table. For a moment, I only listened to the clock above the stove. Tick, tick, tick. The sound seemed too loud, as if the house itself was counting down to something. Then I opened the envelope. The first line made the room blur. Dear Mrs. Whitaker, this letter confirms receipt of your inquiry regarding equity access and possible refinancing options for the property located at 214 Ashbury Lane, Columbus, Ohio. I read it once, then again, then a third time slower. Equity access. Refinancing. My house. There were more pages behind it. Estimated property value, possible, loan amount, monthly payment scenarios, a note requesting additional verification before proceeding. Near the bottom of the second page was an email address listed under point of contact, ewhitaker.financial@gmail.com. Ethan. For a few seconds, I did not breathe. He had not transferred anything yet. He had not succeeded. But he had reached toward my home with both hands while telling everyone he was reaching toward me with love. I pressed one palm flat against the table. This is real, I whispered. Not confusion, not grief, not misplaced paper. Real. I called Patricia first. She answered quickly. Marjorie, I got a letter, I said. What kind? A mortgage company. It says someone made an inquiry about refinancing or accessing equity on my house. Her voice changed. Do not throw anything away. Do not write on it. Put every page back in the envelope after you make copies. It lists Ethan's email. A pause. Read it to me. I did. Patricia was quiet while I finished. Then she said, "This is important. It may not mean he completed an application, but it shows intent. I want you to call the company and ask for their fraud department or compliance department. Tell them you did not authorize any inquiry. Ask for a freeze or note on the file. Will they speak to me? You own the property?" "Yes." "Then they should. Be calm. Ask for names. Write everything down." After hanging up, I made the call. The first representative put me on hold. The second asked security questions. The third finally introduced herself as Denise from the compliance team. I wrote her name carefully on my legal pad. "Mrs. Whitaker," she said, "I can confirm that an online inquiry was submitted regarding the property. By me, the form lists your name as the property owner, but the contact email is not mine." "Yes, ma'am. I see that. Was there a signature?" "No completed signature yet. This appears to be an inquiry stage, not a finalized application." "Yet." Such a small word. Such a large threat. "I did not authorize this," I said. "I did not authorize this," I said. Denise's voice softened. "I understand. I'm placing a note on the file that the property owner disputes the inquiry. No further action can proceed without direct verification from you." Direct verification? How Denise's voice softened. "I understand. I'm placing a note on the file that the property owner disputes the inquiry. No further action can proceed without direct verification from you." Direct verification. How government issued verbal confirmation and written authorization. Not from my son. "No, ma'am. From you." I nearly cried from relief. When the call ended, I wrote down every detail. Then I made copies of the letter, placed the original in my binder, and tucked the binder beneath Michael's sweaters again. I had just closed the cedar chest when my phone rang. Ethan. I stared at his name until the ringing stopped. Then it rang again. This time I answered. "Hello?" "Mom," he said too quickly. "Did you get some mail today?" I looked toward the kitchen table. "What kind of mail?" He exhaled, probably something confusing from a lender. "Don't worry about it." My heart began pounding, but my voice stayed level. Why would I get confusing mail from a lender? It's junk. Those companies send things all the time when you're older and own property. Do they usually include your email address? Silence. There are silences that deny. There are silences that think. This one calculated. Finally, he said, "I was just exploring options. For my house? For your future? No, Ethan. For my house." His voice lowered. "Mom, you don't understand how expensive care can get. I have not asked for care. You may need it. For my house. For your future. No, Ethan. For my house." His voice lowered. "Mom, you don't understand how expensive care can get. I have not asked for care. You may need it. Dr. Harris disagrees. Dr. Harris saw you for 20 minutes, and you saw my home as collateral." He made a sharp sound, almost a laugh. "That's unfair." "Is it?" I was trying to understand what resources might be available if things got worse. Without telling me, I knew you'd overreact. There it was again. My response used as the excuse for his secrecy. "I called the company," I said. His breath caught. Only slightly, but I heard it. What I told them. I did not authorize the inquiry." "Mom, why would you do that?" "Because I did not authorize the inquiry. You may have damaged your own options. My options are not yours to arrange." His voice hardened. "You're making decisions from fear." "No, I am making decisions from evidence." "Evidence," he snapped. "What evidence?" "A junk letter. A few mixed-up memories. Sophie feeding your paranoia because she doesn't understand adult problems. The mention of Sophie changed the air in the room. Leave Sophie out of this. She put ideas in your head. No, Ethan. She confirmed what you said. He went silent again. This time, the silence was not calculation. It was anger. You need to be careful, he said. My hand tightened around the phone. Is that a threat? It's advice. From my son, or from the man trying to borrow against my house. He hung up. I stood there with the dead phone in my hand, listening to the dial tone until it stopped. That evening, Rebecca came over alone. She looked exhausted. No makeup, hair pulled back, eyes swollen. She stood on my porch, holding her purse with both hands like a shield. Can I come in? She asked. I opened the door. She stepped inside and looked around the living room as if seeing it differently now. Her gaze lingered on Michael's photo, then on the piano, then on the hallway Ethan had walked through all his life. I didn't know about the mortgage inquiry, she said. I believed her, not because I wanted to, but because shame was written all over her face. I need you to be honest with me, I said. She nodded, tears already forming. Is Ethan in debt? Rebecca closed her eyes. Yes, the word was barely sound. How much I don't know exactly. More than he told me at first. Credit cards. A private business investment that failed. Some money he borrowed from a client friend. He said he could fix it before anyone knew. I sat down slowly. Before anyone knew, I repeated. She covered her mouth. He told me helping you organize things was temporary. He said if he could manage everything for a little while, maybe use the house equity properly, he could pay things down and protect us all. Protect you with my home. I know. Her voice broke. I know how it sounds. How it sounds is better than what it is. She flinched, but she did not argue. I should have questioned him sooner, she whispered. At first, I thought he was scared for you. Then I thought he was overwhelmed. Then Sophie started asking questions, and I realized he got angry every time anyone said you seemed fine. I watched her carefully. Why are you telling me now? Rebecca reached into her purse and pulled out a folded printout. Because I found this in his laptop bag. She handed it to me. It was a draft email to Paul Mercer. Not sent, perhaps, or printed by mistake. My eyes moved down the page until one sentence stopped me cold. If we can establish a documented pattern of confusion, it may be easier to persuade her to accept transfer of financial authority before she becomes suspicious. Before she becomes suspicious. I looked up. Rebecca was crying openly now. I'm sorry, she said. Marjorie, I am so sorry. I folded the paper carefully. Part of me wanted to comfort her. Another part of me could not yet afford that kindness. Does Ethan know you have this? She shook her head. Then you need to be careful. I know. No, I said, standing. You need to hear me. He is not just lying to me now. He is cornered. And cornered people often reach for whoever is closest. Her face paled. Sophie, she whispered. Yes. Rebecca gripped her purse. I'll take her to my sister's for a few days. Good. After she left, I called Patricia again. This time, when I told her what Rebecca had brought, Patricia did not remain calm. Marjorie, she said, make a copy of that immediately. Keep the original separate. We may now be looking at attempted financial exploitation. I looked toward Michael's photograph. The man in the frame smiled back from a younger, safer lifetime. I know, I said. That night, I added the mortgage letter and Rebecca's printout to the binder. The plastic sleeves made a soft sound as I turned them like pages in a book no mother should ever have to write. Then I opened the yellow legal pad. October 11th. Mortgage inquiry letter received. Ethan's email listed. Company confirmed inquiry was submitted online. Rebecca admitted Ethan has debts. Rebecca gave me draft email showing intent to create documented pattern of confusion. My hand trembled over the last line, but I wrote it anyway. Ethan was not worried I was confused. He needed everyone else to be. The next morning, I drove to Patricia Monroe's office with my binder buckled into the passenger seat like a living thing. It was an old habit from my library years. Important documents did not go in the trunk. They did not sit loosely on the floor. They stayed where I could see them. The sky was pale and cloudy, and the streets of Columbus were slick from a light rain that had fallen before dawn. I remember gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary, not because I doubted my ability to drive, but because I could feel Ethan's voice trying to live inside my head. You're making decisions from fear. You don't know what you're doing. Will you remember to? It takes effort to push someone else's version of you out of your mind once they have spoken it often enough. That is what people do not understand. Manipulation does not only change what others think of you. It tries to change what you think of yourself. So as I drove, I said facts aloud. My name is Marjorie Whitaker. I am 68 years old. I live at 214 Ashbury Lane. I saw Dr. Harris. I did not authorize a mortgage inquiry. I did not sign Ethan's papers. I am not confused. By the time I reached Patricia's office, my voice was steady. Her office sat on the second floor of a brick building near German Village, above a small accounting firm and a florist that always smelled faintly of lilies. Patricia met me herself at the reception desk. She was 63, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, and dressed in a charcoal suit that made her look like she had never once misplaced a document in her life. "Marjorie," she said, taking both my hands. "Come in." The warmth in her voice nearly made me cry, but I swallowed it down. I had cried enough alone. Today, I needed to be clear. We sat in her office, where framed degrees lined one wall, and a photograph of Patricia with Michael from a charity golf event sat on a bookshelf. Seeing his face there startled me. He looked younger, broad-shouldered, laughing at something outside the frame. Patricia noticed me looking. "He was a good man," she said. "Yes," I whispered. "He was." Then I placed the binder on her desk. "This is everything." She did not open it immediately. Instead, she looked at me. "Before we go through it, I need to ask, do you feel physically unsafe in your home?" I thought carefully. Not exactly. Ethan has never hit me. He has never threatened me plainly, but he still has a key. "Change the locks." The instruction came fast. I thought about it. "Do it today. Not tomorrow. Today." I nodded. Then she opened the binder. For nearly 40 minutes, Patricia read. She did not gasp. She did not interrupt with soft sympathy. She made notes on a yellow pad of her own, her pen moving steadily as she turned each plastic sleeve. The mortgage letter, the email draft Rebecca had found, the pharmacy note, the bank records, the printed summary from Dr. Harris, the dates of Ethan entering my house from Nancy's camera, the list Ethan had read in my living room. When Patricia finished, she leaned back and removed her glasses. This is no longer just family conflict. The words chilled me. What is it? Potential financial exploitation, possible undue influence, possibly attempted fraud depending on what he submitted and to whom. At minimum, he has been building a false narrative about your capacity while seeking access to your assets. I had known it. Still hearing it from an attorney made my chest ache. Can he take my house? Not easily. Not if we act now. What do we do? She turned to a clean page. First, locks. Second, revoke any informal access he has. Change banking passwords, email passwords, account recovery, phone numbers, everything. Third, we notify the bank and mortgage company in writing that Ethan Whitaker has no authority to act on your behalf. Fourth, I will prepare a formal letter to Paul Mercer, making it clear that you are represented by counsel and that all communication regarding your assets must come through me. I breathed out slowly. And Dr. Harris? His letter is very helpful. I want a signed capacity statement on his letterhead. We may need it if Ethan escalates. Escalates how Patricia's eyes sharpened. He may try to involve adult protective services. He may claim you are unsafe living alone. He may try to persuade family members to pressure you again. He may attempt another financial move before he realizes doors are closing. The room felt colder. And if he does, then we document respond, and if needed, seek court protection. Court. The word seemed too large for a family, too public, too final. Patricia saw my expression soften with pain. Marjorie, she said quietly, I know he is your son. I will not pretend that makes this easy. But being your son does not give him the right to dismantle your life. I looked again at Michael's photograph. He would be ashamed, I said. Of Ethan? I nodded. Patricia's voice softened. Perhaps, but he would be proud of you. Those words went straight to the place in me that had been holding its breath since the first missing letter. I pressed my fingers to my eyes. I keep wondering where I failed him, I whispered. You did not create his choices, but I raised him. You raised a child. He became an adult. Adults are responsible for what they do with the love they were given. I sat with that sentence for a long moment. Then Patricia asked, who else knows the full situation? Nancy knows most of it. Rebecca knows more now. Sophie overheard enough. Frank and Linda still believe Ethan, I think. Do not try to convince everyone right now. People attached to a false version of events often need undeniable proof before they release it. Like a recording, I said. Patricia's eyes lifted. What recording? What? I told her about Nancy's porch camera. How it had captured Ethan entering my house while I was away. How one clip showed him leaving with an envelope. Do you have the files? Tyler downloaded them to a flash drive? Nancy kept one copy. I have one at home. Good. Bring it to me. There's something else, I said slowly. Nancy's camera shows outside, but it doesn't show what he did inside. Patricia tapped her pen once against the desk. Does Ethan still believe he can enter your house? Yes, unless he notices the locks. Then we need to be careful. You cannot record illegally in places where privacy is expected, but inside your own home, common areas are different. You may install security cameras for your safety. No bathrooms, no guest bedroom, nothing inappropriate. Entryways, kitchen, living room, those are reasonable. My heart began to beat faster. You think he'll come back? I think desperate people often return to what has worked before. After leaving Patricia's office, I did exactly what she told me. First, I drove to the bank. I sat with a branch manager named Allison, who listened with professional seriousness as I explained that my son had no authority over my accounts. She helped me change passwords, remove Ethan as an online helper, update security questions, and place verbal verification requirements on withdrawals over a certain amount. When she asked for a new security phrase, I almost laughed. Use maple tree, I said. The tree Michael had planted. The tree Ethan wanted to turn into equity. Then I called a locksmith from the parking lot. By 4 o'clock, a man named Raymond was replacing the front and back locks, while Nancy stood in my living room with her arms crossed like a small-town sheriff. About time, she muttered. When Raymond handed me the new keys, I felt a strange grief. A mother should not have to lock out her child. but a woman has the right to lock out anyone who enters her home to harm her. That evening, Nancy's grandson, Tyler, came back with 2 small indoor cameras still sealed in boxes.
I can set them up,
He said, looking awkward but kind.
they'll record motion clips.
You can see them on your phone.
I'm not very good with phone apps, I admitted.
He smiled. Then I'll write instructions. We placed one camera in the living room on the bookshelf angled toward the front entry and Michael's desk. The second went in the kitchen, high on top of the china cabinet, with a view of the back door table and counter. They were small enough that unless someone knew to look, they would vanish into ordinary shadows. Nancy watched Tyler adjust the angle. "Make sure it catches that desk," she said.
It does,
He answered. The desk where the deed folder had once been. The desk Ethan could not stop circling. When they left, I sat alone in the living room with the new keys in my hand and the security app open on my phone. There I was, on the screen, small and gray-haired, in my own chair, looking older than I felt, and stronger than I had believed. I thought about calling Ethan and telling him the locks were changed. I did not. Instead, I wrote in my legal pad, October 12th, met attorney Patricia Monroe. She identified potential financial exploitation and undue influence. Changed bank access. Notified accounts. Changed locks. Installed security cameras in living room and kitchen for safety. Then I paused. Outside, the maple leaves scraped softly against the front window. I added one final line. If Ethan comes back into my home now, the house itself will remember. The first night after the cameras were installed, I barely slept. Every small sound became Ethan. The furnace clicking on beneath the floorboards. The maple branches brushing the front window. The ice maker dropping cubes in the kitchen. Even the old house settling in the dark made my eyes open and my hand reach for the phone on the nightstand. But Ethan did not come that night, or the next. By the third evening, I began to wonder if Patricia was wrong. Maybe changing the locks had been enough. Maybe Ethan had realized too many people were asking questions. Maybe Rebecca had confronted him. Maybe Paul Mercer had warned him to step back. Hope can be dangerous when you are tired. It offers rest before safety has truly arrived. On Saturday afternoon, Rebecca called. "Sophie and I are at my sister's," she said. Her voice was low tense. "Ethan thinks we're just giving him space."
Good. He's angry, Marjorie. I know. No, I mean different. He keeps saying everyone is turning against him because of you.
I closed my eyes. Because of the truth. He doesn't see it that way.
They rarely do.
Good. He's angry, Marjorie.
I know. No, I mean different. He keeps saying everyone is turning against him because of you.
I closed my eyes. Because of the truth. He doesn't see it that way. They rarely do. Rebecca was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "He asked where your deed is." My whole body went still. This morning. He tried to sound casual. He said if you were going to accuse him of things, he needed to make sure your documents were safe from strangers. Strangers, I repeated. I told him I didn't know. Do you know? That was true. I had moved the original deed and several other documents to a safe deposit box after Patricia's office visit. Only Patricia and I knew. Rebecca whispered, "Be careful tonight." Why tonight? He left the house after dinner with his old keyring. I looked toward the front door. The new deadbolt gleamed in the hallway light. Thank you for telling me. After we hung up, I called Nancy. Within 10 minutes, she was at my back door, carrying pepper spray in one hand and a grocery bag in the other. "What's in the bag?" I asked. "Banana muffins," she said. "If we're going to catch a criminal, we shouldn't do it hungry." I almost laughed,
And that almost laugh saved me from crying. Nancy stayed until 10. We drank tea in the kitchen and pretended to talk about normal things. Her grandson Tyler checked the camera app remotely and confirmed everything was working. The living room camera showed the front entry. The kitchen camera showed the back door and the counter where Ethan used to sort my mail like he had a right. At 10:15, Nancy went home but made me promise to call if anything happened. "Don't be brave alone," she said from the porch. "I won't." But when I locked the door behind her, the house felt much larger. At 11:30, I turned off every downstairs light except the small lamp beside Michael's chair. Then I went upstairs, changed into my nightgown, and did something I had not done since I was a child, afraid of thunderstorms. I left my bedroom door open. Not because I wanted Ethan to come, because if he did, I wanted to hear him. At 12:42 a.m., the notification appeared on my phone. Motion detected front entry. For a second, I could not move. Then I tapped the alert. The video opened in grainy color. My front porch filled the screen. Ethan stood there under the porch light, shoulders hunched against the cold, his face tight with frustration. He tried the old key in the new lock. Once. Twice. A third time, harder. Then he stepped back and stared at the door. I watched my son discover that I had locked him out of my life. His mouth moved. The camera did not record sound from outside, but I knew the shape of anger when I saw it. Then he walked off the porch. For a breath, I thought it was over. Then another alert came. Motion detected kitchen. My stomach dropped. He had gone around back. I opened the kitchen camera. The back door handle shook, slowly at first, then harder. The deadbolt held. Ethan's face appeared briefly in the small window above the door. He cupped his hands around his eyes, peering inside like a stranger trying to find weakness. I should have called the police then. Patricia later told me that. Nancy told me that. Even I tell myself that now. But in that moment, watching my son through a camera while sitting in the dark upstairs, I froze in that terrible space between mother and victim. Part of me still wanted to open the door and demand an explanation. Part of me still remembered him at 8 years old, crying because he had broken Michael's watch. Part of me still thought maybe if I speak to him, he will come back to himself. Then he disappeared from the camera. For 5 minutes, nothing happened. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in one hand, breath shallow. Then came a sound from downstairs. Not the front door, not the back door, the side basement door. I had forgotten the old lock on that door. Michael had installed it years ago, and we rarely used it. It opened from the narrow outside steps into the basement, then up into the kitchen hallway. Ethan had not forgotten. The next camera alert came from the kitchen. At 12:53 a.m., my son stepped into my house. He had not broken a window. He had not kicked down a door. He had used the one entrance I failed to protect the way he had used every opening I had ever given him. On the screen, he stood still and listened. I stopped breathing with him. He wore dark pants, a gray jacket, and gloves. Gloves. That detail broke something final in me. A worried son does not wear gloves to check on his mother after midnight. Ethan moved through the kitchen quickly. He opened the mail drawer. Then the cabinet beside the refrigerator. Then the small basket where my medicine used to be. He paused, looked around, and walked into the living room. The camera there caught him perfectly. He went straight to Michael's roll-top desk. My hand flew to my mouth. He tried the top drawer first, locked, then the side drawer, locked. Then he crouched and felt underneath, searching for the little taped key I used to keep there years ago. I had removed it. His face twisted. He whispered something I could not hear. Then he began opening nearby drawers, moving papers,
lifting books, checking behind framed photographs. He pulled out an old envelope from the lower shelf, opened it, cursed silently, and tossed it aside. He was looking for the deed. He was looking for the binder. He was looking for whatever power he still believed he could steal. Then, he did something colder than searching. He walked back into the kitchen and opened the cabinet above the sink. He took down a mug, filled it with water, and poured half of it onto the counter near my pill organizer. Then he moved the pill organizer from the far side of the counter to the wet spot. He was creating a scene. A confused old woman spilling water near her medication. He took a dish towel, wiped only part of the counter, then stopped, as if arranging evidence. My hands began to shake so hard the phone trembled. The camera kept recording. Ethan went to the stove next. He turned one burner knob slightly. Not enough to ignite. Just enough. Then he stepped back and looked at it. My blood turned cold. A false story about bills was one thing. A false story about missing mail was another. But a stove gas danger fire could become the kind of proof families do not question. He wanted them to believe I was unsafe. He wanted the house to testify against me. Then his phone rang. He answered in a whisper, but the kitchen camera caught the sound clearly enough. "I'm inside," he said. "No, she's asleep. I just need the deed or anything Patricia hasn't seen." A pause. "I don't care what Rebecca thinks anymore." Another pause. Then the sentence that would later silence an entire room. "Once everyone believes she's confused, the house will be mine before Christmas." I lowered the phone and stared into the darkness. There are moments when grief leaves you. Not forever, not cleanly, but long enough for survival to stand up. I called Patricia first, then Nancy, then 911. My voice did not shake when I gave the dispatcher my address. "My son is inside my home without permission," I said. "I have video recording. I am upstairs with the door locked." Downstairs, Ethan was still searching. But for the first time, he was not the only one making a record. The police arrived 8 minutes after my call. 8 minutes can feel like a lifetime when someone you gave birth to is downstairs turning your home into evidence against you. I stayed in my bedroom with the door locked, sitting on the edge of the bed, my phone pressed so tightly in my hand that my fingers ached. The dispatcher stayed on the line with me. Her voice was calm, but I could hear my own breathing between her questions. "Are you still upstairs, Mom?" "Yes." "Is the door locked?" "Yes." "Can you hear him?" I listened. Below me, a drawer slammed. "Yes," I whispered. "He's still searching. Officers are almost there." Almost. Downstairs, Ethan moved through my house like a man who believed time still belonged to him. The camera app showed him back in the living room, crouched in front of Michael's desk again. He had found a letter opener and was trying to force the side drawer. The old wood groaned. I felt the sound inside my chest. "Please don't break it," I whispered, though no one in the room could hear me except the dispatcher. Then blue and red light flashed against my bedroom wall. The dispatcher said, "Officers are outside. Stay where you are." A knock thundered through the house, Columbus Police Department. On the camera, Ethan froze. For 1 second, he looked like a boy caught with stolen candy. Then he looked toward the kitchen, the basement door. "No," I said aloud. He ran. The kitchen camera caught him moving fast, one gloved hand brushing the counter, his shoulder hitting the edge of a chair. He headed for the basement stairs, just as another officer appeared at the back door window. "Police." "Stop." Ethan stopped. Not because he was innocent, because every exit had closed. From upstairs, I heard voices, heavy footsteps, commands, Ethan speaking too loudly too quickly. "This is my mother's house." "She's confused.
She called you by mistake. There it was again. Even with police standing in front of him, even caught inside my home after midnight, he reached for the same lie. My mother has cognitive issues, he said. I'm her son. I'm trying to help. I opened my bedroom door before the dispatcher told me not to. Mrs. Whitaker, please remain. I need them to hear me, I said. I walked slowly down the stairs, one hand on the banister. My knees trembled, but not from confusion. From rage, from grief, from the awful dignity required when your own child tries to make strangers doubt your mind before they even know your name. At the bottom of the stairs, 2 officers stood in my hallway. Ethan was near the kitchen, hands visible, face pale and furious. His gloves were still on. One officer turned toward me. Ma'am, are you Marjorie Whitaker? Yes. Are you injured? No. Ethan spoke immediately. Mom, tell them this is a misunderstanding. I looked at him. Not my boy. Not in that moment. A man in gloves. A man in my house without permission. A man who had turned my stove knob and planned to call me unsafe. It is not a misunderstanding, I said. Ethan's eyes sharpened. Mom, you're upset. You don't know I know exactly what happened. The officer nearest me looked from Ethan to me. Ma'am, do you want him here? No. Does he have permission to enter tonight? No. Ethan snapped. I have a key. You had a key, I said. The locks were changed. The officer's expression changed slightly. How did you enter? He asked Ethan. Ethan hesitated. That hesitation told its own story. He came through the basement door. I said, and I have video. Ethan's head turned toward me. For the first time, fear entered his face cleanly. Not irritation, not insult. Fear. What video, he asked. I did not answer him. I held up my phone to the officer. I installed security cameras after repeated unauthorized entries. The recording shows him trying the front and back doors, entering through the basement, searching my desk, moving my medication, and turning my stove knob. The second officer stepped closer. You have that recorded? Yes. Ethan's voice rose. She's twisting this. I was checking on her. She's been forgetful. She's been paranoid. Ask my family. The officer looked at him calmly. Sir, stop talking for a moment. But Ethan could not stop. Desperation had broken his smoothness. She's not well. She called lawyers. She turned my daughter against me. She thinks everyone is stealing from her. I looked at the officer. He told someone on the phone while inside my home that once everyone believed I was confused, the house would be his before Christmas. Ethan went silent. The silence was almost beautiful. One officer asked to see the footage. I played the clips from the kitchen camera first. The officer watched Ethan pour water near my pills. Watched him move the pill organizer. Watched him turn the stove knob. Watched him answer the phone. The audio was not perfect, but it was clear enough. Once everyone believes she's confused, the house will be mine before Christmas. The officer's face hardened. Ethan whispered, That's out of context. I almost laughed. What context makes that sentence loving? I asked. No one answered. They escorted Ethan outside while one officer stayed with me to take my statement. He asked questions carefully, respectfully, and for the first time in weeks, a stranger listened to me without looking at someone else for confirmation. Nancy appeared on my porch in a coat over her pajamas. I'm her neighbor, she announced before anyone asked. And I have recordings too. Of course she did. Within an hour, Patricia arrived as well, her hair pinned back, her coat buttoned wrong in her rush. She stepped into my living room, looked at the damaged drawer, the wet counter, the stove knob, and then at me. Are you all right?
No, I said, but I'm clear. Her eyes softened. Yes, you are. By morning, Ethan had not been formally charged with everything Patricia believed might apply. But a report had been taken. The footage had been preserved. The officers had advised me to seek a protective order if I felt threatened. Patricia said we would decide the next legal steps carefully. I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. By noon, Frank called. "Marjorie," he said, voice strained. "Ethan says you had him arrested." "I called the police because he was inside my house after midnight. He says he was checking on you. He was wearing gloves." Silence. "He says you're exaggerating." I closed my eyes. Even now, even after everything. "Frank, there is a recording." "What recording?" "The security recording." Another silence. Then he said, "I think the family needs to see it." I looked at Patricia, who was sitting at my kitchen table with a stack of papers. She met my eyes and nodded once. "All right," I said. "Then everyone will see it." Patricia took the phone from my hand and spoke with the calm authority I had been borrowing for days. "Frank, this is attorney Patricia Monroe. Mrs. Whitaker is represented by counsel. If the family wants a meeting, it will happen at her home with me present, and no documents will be signed or discussed without my review." I could hear Frank stammering even from across the table. After she hung up, Patricia said, "He is still trying to control the story." "Then we stopped telling it quietly," I said. That evening, the meeting was arranged for the next day at 4. Ethan wanted to come. Patricia said no. Then Ethan insisted through Frank that he had a right to defend himself. Patricia smiled without warmth. "Excellent. Then he can defend himself in front of the recording." So the stage was set. The same living room where Ethan had tried to convince everyone I was confused would now hold the people he had fooled. Frank, Carol, Linda, Rebecca, Sophie, Nancy, Patricia. Even Paul Mercer agreed to attend after Patricia contacted him directly and informed him that his name and documents had been used in a matter involving disputed capacity and potential exploitation. The next afternoon, I dressed carefully. Navy slacks, white blouse, Michael's wedding ring on a chain around my neck. Before anyone arrived, I stood in the living room and looked at the small camera on the bookshelf. It had seen what my family refused to see. It had listened when they would not. Patricia placed the flash drive on the coffee table. "Are you ready?" she asked. I looked toward the front window, where cars were beginning to pull up along the curb. "No," I said honestly, "but I'm done being doubted." At 4:00 the doorbell rang. This time when the family entered my home, no one sat comfortably. And Ethan, standing near the doorway with his jaw tight and his face pale, never took his eyes off the flash drive in Patricia's hand. Patricia did not raise her voice. That was what made everyone listen. She stood beside the television after the recording ended, her hands folded neatly in front of her, and spoke as if she were reading the weather report instead of describing the collapse of my family. "Mrs. Whitaker has already taken several steps to protect herself," she said. "Her bank accounts have been secured. The mortgage company has been notified that the inquiry was unauthorized. Her physician has documented that he sees no evidence she lacks capacity. The police report from last night includes the unauthorized entry and the security footage." Ethan's face had gone gray. "You're making it sound like I assaulted her," he snapped. Patricia looked at him. "I am making it sound like you entered her home without permission, after midnight searched for property documents, staged evidence to make her appear unsafe, and discussed taking control of her house. Because that is what the recording shows." No one defended him. That silence was a kind of justice, but it hurt all the same. Frank stood up and walked to the window. He kept his back to us. His shoulders were hunched, and for the first time in years, he looked like my little brother again. The boy who once followed me around the backyard, asking me to push him higher on the swing. The man who had sat at my table and believed my son over me. "Marjorie?" he said without turning around.
I'm sorry. I looked down at my hands. I had imagined those words many times during the weeks when everyone doubted me. I thought they would feel like relief. Instead, they felt heavy. Thank you, I said. Linda came to me next. She dropped to the sofa beside me and took my hand, crying so hard she could barely speak. I should have asked you, she said, at dinner. I should have asked you instead of looking at him. I squeezed her hand once. Yes, I said softly. You should have. She cried harder, but I did not take the sentence back. Forgiveness. I was learning did not require pretending the wound was smaller than it was. Rebecca had not moved. She stood behind Sophie like someone afraid that if she let go of her daughter's shoulder, the floor would open beneath them. Her eyes were fixed on Ethan. How much? She asked. Ethan looked at her. Rebecca not here. How much debt? His jaw tightened. This isn't the time. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. You staged your mother's medicine and stove on camera Ethan. I think we passed polite timing about 10 minutes ago. Sophie turned away from him completely. That seemed to hurt Ethan more than anyone else's anger. Soph, he said. She shook her head. Don't. Just one word. But it landed harder than shouting. Paul Mercer cleared his throat and stood his briefcase clutched in one hand. For the record, I want to state that my involvement was based on representations made by Mr. Whitaker, that his mother was experiencing significant cognitive decline, and that the family was seeking elder planning guidance. Patricia's eyes were cold. Those representations were false. I understand that now, he said. Ethan glared at him. You're covering yourself. Paul looked at him with disgust he no longer bothered to hide. Yes, Mr. Whitaker. Because unlike you, I understand what exposure looks like. Nancy made a sound that might have been approval. Patricia turned back to me. Marjorie, I recommend we proceed with written notices today. No one here is to contact financial institutions, medical providers, mortgage companies, or county offices on your behalf. If anyone attempts to do so, it will be treated as unauthorized. Frank nodded quickly. Linda wiped her eyes. Carol whispered, Of course. Ethan laughed bitterly. So that's it? You all just turn on me? Rebecca stepped forward. No, Ethan. We are turning toward what you did. He looked at her with a flash of panic. Rebecca, I was trying to keep us from losing everything by taking from your mother. I was going to fix it. You keep saying that, but you were not fixing anything. You were building a lie big enough to live inside. For a moment, his face crumpled. That was the moment I nearly weakened. Because a mother's heart is a strange, stubborn thing. It can look at a grown man who has harmed her and still remember the infant who reached for her finger. It can see guilt and want to bandage it even when the wound was made by his own hands. Ethan turned to me. Mom, he said, voice breaking. Please, I made mistakes. I know that, but I'm drowning. The room went still. There it was, the truth beneath the scheme. Not love, not concern. Panic. I owe people money, he said. More than I can pay. The investment was supposed to turn around. I thought if I could just access enough equity, I could make payments move things by time. I wasn't going to leave you with nothing. I looked at him. You were going to leave me with no credibility. He flinched. You were going to leave me with a family who thought I couldn't trust my own mind. You were going to leave me with a record that said I was unsafe, forgetful, confused. You were going to put me in a smaller life so you could buy yourself more room. Tears filled his eyes. I didn't think of it that way. No, I said. You didn't think of me at all. That sentence broke whatever remained of his defense. He lowered himself into the chair by the door and covered his face. For the first time since childhood, I heard my son sob.
No one moved to comfort him. That was perhaps the saddest part. Not because he deserved comfort in that moment, but because he had burned the bridge toward it. Patricia spoke gently to me. You do not have to decide everything today, but I already knew some things. I want the protective order process started, I said. Ethan looked up sharply. Mom, I want all locks checked again. I want the basement door replaced. I want my estate documents updated. And I do not want Ethan in this house. His face twisted. You'd really do that to your own son. I stood. My knees hurt. My back ached. My heart felt older than 68, but my voice was clear. No, Ethan. I am doing this for myself. There is a difference. Rebecca began crying quietly. Sophie came to my side again. This time, she did not cling like a frightened child. She stood beside me like a witness. I'm going with Mom, Rebecca said suddenly. Ethan stared. What, I'm taking Sophie and we're staying with my sister until I figure out what comes next. You can't just leave. Rebecca's face hardened. Watch me. That was when I understood that the recording had not only freed me, it had freed her too. Frank finally turned from the window. Ethan, you need help. Legal help. Financial help. Maybe more than that. But you can't ask your mother to pay for your choices. Ethan stared at him betrayed. Frank's voice shook. And I should have said that sooner. The meeting ended in pieces. Paul Mercer left first after handing Patricia his card and promising full cooperation if contacted formally. Frank and Carol left next, both hugging me carefully, both ashamed. Linda stayed longest, apologizing again until I finally said, Linda, I hear you. Now let me breathe. Nancy walked out with them to make sure Ethan left too. He paused on the porch. Through the front window, I saw him look back at the house. Not at me, at the house. That told me I had made the right decision. When the door closed behind him, the silence was not peaceful yet. It was raw, like a room after a storm has passed, but the broken glass has not been swept. Rebecca sat down at my kitchen table and cried. Sophie leaned against her. I made tea because I did not know what else to do with hands that were no longer shaking. After a while, Rebecca whispered, I should have protected you. I placed a cup in front of her. You were being lied to, too. I still should have seen it. Yes, I said. You should have. She nodded through tears. Then I added, but you brought me that email, and you protected Sophie. That matters. She covered her face and cried harder. That evening, after everyone left but Nancy, I opened my yellow legal pad one more time. October 14th. Recording played for family. Ethan admitted debts. Family heard the truth. Protective order to begin. Rebecca and Sophie leaving Ethan for now. House remains mine. Voice remains mine. Nancy stood in the doorway watching me. You okay? She asked. I looked around the kitchen at the wet counter now cleaned, the stove knob straightened, the old clock still ticking. No, I said. Then after a moment I added, but I'm safe. And for that day, safe was enough. The first thing I did after everyone left was walk through my house alone. Not because I was looking for damage. Patricia had already photographed the desk drawer, the stove knob, the basement entry, the counter where Ethan had staged my pills. The police had their report. The locks had been checked. Nancy had marched through every room like a general inspecting a battlefield. But I needed to see my home without fear standing beside me. I started in the kitchen, the same kitchen where Ethan had sat as a little boy with peanut butter on his cheeks. The same kitchen where Michael had danced with me one Christmas Eve while snow pressed against the windows. The same kitchen where my son had poured water near my medicine and tried to turn ordinary objects into proof against me. I stood there for a long time. Then I wiped the counter again, even though it was already clean. Some stains are not visible. Over the next few weeks, my life became paperwork. Protective order, paperwork. Bank paperwork. Estate paperwork. New passwords. New contacts. New copies of documents Patricia insisted I keep in 3 separate places. I updated my will. I changed my emergency contacts. I removed Ethan from every account where his name had quietly found a place. At Patricia's office, I signed each document slowly, not because I was confused, because I understood every word. When the updated estate plan was finished, Patricia slid the folder toward me and said, "You are fully protected now." I touched the folder. "No," I said. "But I am better protected." When the updated estate plan was finished, Patricia slid the folder toward me and said, "You are fully protected now." I touched the folder. "No," I said, "but I am better protected." She smiled faintly. That is the wiser answer. Ethan did not come back to the house. For a while he called. I did not answer. Then he sent messages. I saved them and sent them to Patricia. Some were angry. Some were apologetic. Some were full of the same old poison wrapped in softer words. "Mom," I was desperate. "Mom, you don't understand. Mom, you're letting strangers turn you against your own son." The last one hurt the most, because it proved he still believed the truth was something someone had done to him. Rebecca filed for separation before Thanksgiving. She brought Sophie to see me the Sunday after. They arrived with a pie from the grocery store because Rebecca said she did not yet trust herself to bake without crying into the filling. "That's all right," I told her. "Store-bought pie has saved many women." Sophie laughed for the first time in weeks. We ate at the kitchen table, not the dining room. That room still felt too heavy. Sophie told me about school about a history project about a drawing she was making of the maple tree in my front yard. Rebecca apologized again, but this time she did not collapse into guilt. "I'm getting counseling," she said. "Sophie is too. I'm glad she misses who she thought her father was." "So do I said. That truth sat between us gently. Not everything broken becomes hatred. Some things become grief. Frank came by before Christmas with a toolbox. He replaced the basement door himself, though I had already hired someone. I think he needed to do something with his hands because words had failed him so badly. When he finished, he stood at the bottom of the basement steps and said, "I should have believed you." "Yes," I said. He nodded. "I'll spend a long time being sorry for that." "I know. Do you forgive me?" I looked at my brother, gray-haired, now ashamed, and smaller than I remembered. "I'm working on it," I said. It was not the answer he wanted, but it was the truth. And after everything I had earned the right to give the truth without decorating it, by January, I started volunteering at a senior advocacy center twice a month. Patricia suggested it. At first, I thought she meant I should attend a support group. Then I realized she meant I could help. The first meeting I went to, a 73-year-old woman named Elaine sat beside me and whispered, "My daughter says I'm too forgetful to handle money, but I think she's been using my card." I turned toward her, and for the first time, my pain became useful. I told her, "Start writing everything down." Sometimes healing does not arrive as peace. Sometimes it arrives as purpose. Spring came slowly that year. The maple tree outside my house budded green again, stubborn and beautiful. I had the porch swing repainted white. Nancy said the old color was fine. I told her I was not asking. On the first warm Saturday, Sophie came over with her sketchbook. She sat beside me on the porch and drew the tree while I drank tea. "Grandma," she said after a while, "do you hate Dad?" I watched a robin hop through the grass. "No." She looked surprised. "I'm angry," I said. "I'm hurt. I don't trust him, and I may never have the kind of relationship with him that I once prayed for. But hate would keep me tied to what he did forever. I don't want that." Sophie nodded slowly. "Do you think he'll ever change?" "I don't know, sweetheart." That was another truth I had learned to stop softening. "I hope he does. But I can't build my safety on his, maybe." She leaned her head on my shoulder. I looked at the porch, the tree, the street, the house. Michael and I had built a life inside. For a long time, I thought losing trust in my son meant losing the last piece of my family. But I had been wrong. Family was also Sophie's head on my shoulder, Nancy waving from across the street, Rebecca learning to stand on her own, Frank showing up with tools and remorse, Patricia placing the law between me and harm, Dr. Harris asking the question no one else had asked, "Do you feel unsafe?" And family, I finally understood, had to include me. One evening, months later, I found an old note tucked inside Michael's Bible. His handwriting was shaky from near the end. "Marjorie, never let anyone mistake your kindness for weakness, not even someone you love." I sat on the edge of the bed and cried. Not the desperate tears from before. These were different, softer, clean. I put the note in a frame and placed it on Michael's desk. The same desk Ethan had tried to force open, the same desk where my yellow legal pad had begun saving me one sentence at a time. The house was quiet that night, but it was not the old, lonely quiet. It was mine. I locked the door, checked the stove, turned off the kitchen light, and walked upstairs without doubting myself. For the first time in a long time, I slept through the night.